So my GoPro Hero 7 Black has lasted more than 4 years, and I've never had a piece of technology last this long, so I'm very impressed by it. I have gone through many personal vacations and done a lot of vlogging for personal uses, a lot of action cam sports, going on water, and it has been very reliable, and I was always pleased with the picture quality. Now the Insta360 X3 comes out, and I'm like, well, maybe I can sell this or get rid of it and just replace it simply with the Insta360, because why not have that 360 view and also have the action cam mode that it provides? Well, unfortunately, I was completely wrong. I cannot replace this 4-year-old technology with a new, shiny new release of the Insta360 X3. Let me give you my reasons why I think this is the case and why you probably don't want to sell your GoPro yet. Now, the point of this video isn't to convince you that GoPros are still relevant to this day. We all know that. And I do think that the 360 technology is going to be the future. However, I think there's some very hardcore physical limits, hardware limitations that we're still suffering from, and it's really unfortunate. It's very similar to virtual reality, for example. Sometimes I'm just very unimpressed with the video quality when I watch a 360 video. It's just completely pixelated, and I think it's just so computational hard to have all these pixels in such a small device and deliver quality. And I think that's the fundamental flaw. So let me cut to the chase. So one of the things with the Insta360 is that when you are looking at the 360 footage and you want to extract a flattened image, so maybe you want to get an aspect that's more not 360, you want to like a flat image, the image quality totally falls apart in my opinion, and it doesn't look good, at least not good enough to use in a more kind of semi-professional setting. Now for home videos, I still don't like the results that I get with it, and I would prefer to use my GoPro for specific shots. Now, do I think it's a complete waste? I still love the Insta360, so no, it's not a complete waste. And there's some really amazing things that you can do with the Insta360 that you just simply can't do with the GoPros. Now, the point of this video is to fully educate you so that you make the best well-informed decision when it comes to choosing between these two devices, whether you're going to pick one or the other or even both. First, let's talk about the pros of the Insta360 X3. I have to say it is absolutely amazing. Now, is it a gimmick? Well, I'm going to answer that a little bit later. But I have to say using 360 footage is just so much fun, such a cool, unique thing. And one of the best things about having an Insta360, like a 360 camera, is that you can shoot now and frame later. Shooting now and then framing later can be more of a hassle or can be kind of annoying in post-production. But I'm going to talk more about that in the cons, but that's an obvious flaw. Now, thankfully, their software is absolutely amazing. And I'm talking about specifically their Windows desktop application. One of the things I really lamented having to do is, post editing, like cutting clips and stuff like that. But they made the experience really, really seamless and very, very intuitive. It's very easy just to get into the desktop software, copy all your files onto your local drive so that it's very fast and reliable. I don't like using their app, by the way, because it uses a Wi-Fi connection. I think you can do a direct USB-C connection. But anyways, I don't like using the app because it's too small, it's too crammed, it's very hard to do a workflow. But on my desktop, the app works flawlessly, and I'll talk more about the software just really quickly. So fantastic software right off the bat. The experience of able to shoot now and frame later is one of the key quintessential things about having an Insta360 X3. And to that note, when I go skateboarding and I'm filming a line for my friend, I no longer have to really painstakingly try to angle the GoPro so that it fits perfectly, so that the subject is perfectly in frame. I no longer have to care about that. I can just simply blindly aim the Insta360 on a tripod pole and just follow the person around. I don't have to worry about framing. It is one of the best, most mind-blowing experiences ever, just being able to follow someone. So let's look at some sample footage, and I can show you the scenario where it just becomes so much easier to trace someone, and you kind of get that gimbal shot, that fluid motion as you're following some action, and it just works very well. Oh, shit. Now, if you're self-filming or just filming yourself, having that camera there and be able to pan and then track your motion as you walk in front of the camera, it's just simply amazing. And I think the technology is really, really cool. But unfortunately, like I said, the image quality doesn't live up to my expectations. Now, you be the judge of that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you think so far of the image quality? So the last couple of pros have to deal with how good the UX, the user experience, is on the actual device. I find that navigating through the menus, trying to find options and change and stuff like that, the quick menus, for example, are absolutely amazing and a lot better than the GoPro 9, the laggy interface that it had. So I'm really appreciate how snappy and responsive. And that's something that I despised about GoPro over the years, is that they seem to put all their R&D into the optics and everything, but they never really made a good user experience because it was so laggy and it was just frustrating to use. So there you have it. Those are the main pros why I love the Insta360 so much and how it differentiates itself from the GoPro, where sometimes I'm filming something with the GoPro and I would completely miss the frame or miss the shot and it's completely gone. But with 360 footage, you cannot mess up at all. So let's go into some samples. So let's go into the action mode. We're going to do a side-by-side comparison with the GoPro and tell me what you guys think about it. Let's test out the dynamic range. How does the mic sound? Testing mic 1, 2, 3. We're in a skate park and the light is very tough on the camera. So yeah, that's how it's gonna sound. Testing mic 1, 2, 3. GoPro 7 versus the Insta360 3rd generation. Now let's do an indoor test. I'm gonna be walking in this room with the low light situation. It's not gonna be very fancy, and let me know what you think about this. Okay, so we're gonna be doing an indoor test. And I know this is not the nicest looking place to actually film something, but it gives a really good torture test for both these cameras. So I got the GoPro on my left hand and I got the Insta360 X3 in action cam mode with all on my right hand. And both are set to 1/50, 24 frames per second at the shutter speed of 1/50. And we basically want to decrease the shutter speed so that we get the most light as possible. Now this is not a exactly nicely lit area. My face isn't lit up, so this is a real big torture test on how these cameras perform in an indoor situation. Now, a lot of YouTubers will be filming. Now, a lot of sponsored YouTubers will be filming the action cams, obviously outside, because that gives it the best quality. And the best quality means that you need the most sunlight, therefore it looks the best and probably sells the camera the most. But if you're using this maybe on a cloudy or overcast day, or you're indoors or something like that, chances are you're not going to have that adequate light, and it's going to have to bump the ISO, which is going to increase a lot of noise. It's going to make it very kind of grainy footage, and this is on top of using, let's say, stabilization, where it crops in more and all that stuff, and extracts a part of the 360 camera such that it decreases the resolution and making it even softer and softer. So yeah, that's going to be not as good. Also, we're going to be testing the microphone between these two mics. I've changed the Insta360 to directional pickup pattern, so hopefully it's gonna pick me up directly here. So I'm just gonna run inside and see how it does. All right, so that ends the test, the internal indoor vlogging test with low light. Let's see how they do. Okay, so we did 2 vlogging tests in action cam mode. What do you think is the better camera when it comes to like doing home vacation vlogs, stuff that you want to have memories for many years to come? I found that for sure the microphone quality on the GoPro was a lot better. It just found a lot clearer and richer, and I really like that. I think audio is underrated. And I also found obviously that the picture quality was a lot more fine, more detailed in the GoPro. So the colors looked a lot better. And unfortunately, the Insta360 just didn't really live up to my expectation when it comes to image quality. Now, in terms of both stabilization, they both did a really good job. I'm really impressed with the Insta360's flow state. It's just so buttery smooth, as some of the skate footage that you may have seen. Now let's go into some really low light situations. You can see that the Insta360 doesn't do well, but of course a GoPro in that similar situation with hyper smooth enabled, it's not going to do very well. And the reason why there's a lot of technical reasons why. It has to do with the low shutter speed. So basically that creates a lot of motion blur. And when the camera is trying to stabilize the footage electronically in the actual camera itself, the motion blur really causes it to fail. And it kind of gives you the weird artifact in nighttime where it kind of just looks all blurry at sometimes. So I think the GoPro would do slightly better in that situation, but I didn't have a comparison in that specific spot. Now here's some footage of skateboarding in action sport where the Insta360 X3 really shows its power prowess, and how it makes it so easy to film the subject and be able to follow them. And of course, set up a tripod so that you can film yourself and get more of that shot.
Say hi to the camera. That's it.
You'll notice in one of the shots, I'm filming myself with the GoPro, and the field of view is so limited, so you don't get the full like run up to the trick, the actual trick, and then landing the trick and riding away. Whereas with the Insta360, it's almost as if someone is filming you, which is very, very cool. The only issue with the Insta360 is its position and where it's recording the subject. It was a little bit too far in this scenario, and I would have to crop in significantly a lot more in post, which would really degrade the image quality. Alternatively, I could put the camera a lot closer to the action, but that puts it at risk of being toppled over or knocked over if I bail my trick. Now let's go into the cons of the Insta360 in comparison to the GoPro. Now the first and most obvious one is that the GoPro has much better resolution when it comes to like filming a flat image. When you just want to film like not a 360, just 180-degree field of view, and it just looks way better. Like it almost, like the GoPro almost looks like a smartphone camera. So that's very impressive. The reason why the Insta360 does a poor job is that, one, it only films up to 5.7K. And when you're filming action sports, you want to get that 60 frames per second so that you can put it in slow-mo at times. So that then it goes down to 4K. So now you have a 4K image and you're trying to extract like a flattened image of it. And on top of that, you have to have flow state stabilization, which even crops in a little bit more to give it that room so that you can electronically stable the footage. And all in all that crop into a 4K image just looks really bad. So we're going to talk about some tips on how to avoid these situations, but I'm just very kind of like unimpressed with the image quality in that regard, and it really pains me to see it. So the second con with the Insta360 is what I mentioned earlier. It's the fact that in post-production, you have to have this extra step where you want to, keyframe your shots. Now, luckily with the active track mode, as I showed in the software, it does a really good job of doing that. So it's really easy to do, but it's just, think about you filmed an entire vacation and you filmed it all in 360 format. You're going to have to go through all that footage and do that extra step. Whereas with the GoPro, you frame live, like you actually film it as you see it in that perspective. And then you can just edit the footage right away. You don't have to do any post-production. So that is the major downside. Now, obviously, that makes sense, right? Because if you're filming in 360, you do want to like compose a shot a little bit later. Now, there are a couple ways to combat this where you don't have to use the Insta360, but it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having this kind of camera. One, it's to use the action cam mode. So it uses a 180 field of view. Or you can use the me mode, which is really cool. Basically, you can just point the stick out and walk, and it'll always track you. And I think that's actually really neat and very kind of like a very useful feature, very practical. So my third con with the Insta360 is the fact that it's slightly bigger, it's slightly heavier, and for me personally, it just looks more fragile in comparison to a GoPro. Now, I've been on with this GoPro for many trips. I've smashed it. I do have some scratches on the lenses, but the picture quality is perfect. Doesn't really matter. I've taken this in the water, and it has performed very well. It also feels like it has a more rigid body because it's like soft. This is the older version, but I'm sure the new versions are also very good. And the thing with the Insta360 is that it has these two cameras that are bulging out. And you notice that on the GoPro, it has like more of a square rectangular protective lens. And I just feel a lot more confident placing this on a tripod and then filming some skateboarding tricks. And if a skateboard hits it, I don't feel like it's gonna break or anything. Now with the Insta360, I'm a little bit more cautious of how close I place it when it comes to skateboarding. And that's a real big shame because one of the tips that I'm gonna talk about later is that in order to get the best footage, the best quality, you really have to put the Insta360 very close to the subject. So close that it almost feels dangerous because you really want to reduce that field of view, focus on that subject so that you don't have to crop in post-production. And that's one of the main things in order to eliminate that degradation in quality is to obviously zoom in into the subject, but that comes at a scary cost of the delicateness of it. At least in my mind, I just feel like it's very delicate and mentally it stresses me out and I don't want to expose it in real action cam situations. Now, yes, you can put a lens cover on it, but I heard that it does cause some degradation in image quality and the clarity of it. Now, in the end, in the con section, I just want to wrap it up. I just want to ask yourself, is this going to be a gimmick? Is this something that you're going to be using, or is this something that you really want? And personally, for myself, I find that the Insta360 is great to capture very creative, unique shots where it's just too hard to film with a GoPro and then compose a shot in real time. I find, let's say I'm a YouTuber and I film a lot of electric skateboard videos or I review electric bikes. That's a place where I find the Insta360 actually very practical and useful and worth your time. But I find that maybe 95% of the population doesn't do those things. So I'm curious to know what you use the Insta360 for. Let me know in the comment section down below. What makes it more advantageous for you versus just using a regular point and shoot GoPro camera? Now, I want to quickly mention some tips in order to get the best video quality. One of the things that I really think you should do is film at the highest resolution if you don't need that action sports 60 frames per second. So you get that 5.7K and you get a little bit more resolution. Also, if you're filming in low light situations, I'd highly recommend lowering the frame rate to 30 or 24 frames per second to help reduce the noise in the image. Now, when it's really bright outside, I noticed that when I activate the HDR mode, I found that it was a little bit better. It just looked a lot nicer. Basically, that means that the highlights and the shadows look a little bit more even so that the image doesn't look so like crushed, like very contrasty. And that looks kind of cheap and it doesn't look very nice. So being able to salvage some of the colors and the reproduction of real life is very important. I think the active HDR does make a pretty good difference. So my next tip is that you should probably use this only in the daylight when it's really, really bright. When it comes in the evening, I mean, it looks okay. Like you've seen that night footage, you can go back to it on the video timestamps or the chapter links. It looks okay. It's definitely, you can make out people and stuff like that. You can see it. And no phone or GoPro is going to look that good. Maybe phones these days are getting a lot better, but it's going to be very difficult to film 360 in night. And for my last tip to make sure that you get the best picture quality, or like the thing that you actually want to film, the subject, is try to move the camera as close as possible to the actual subject that you're filming. So I found that there was a substantial difference in terms of the distance at which you need to be at the subject to capture like a decent field of view. With the GoPro, you can be pretty far and still get a decent subject because its field of view is a lot, obviously not 360. But with the Insta360, you have to be pretty darn close. So it was very hard for me to get used to the fact that I have pretty much put the camera like right next to the subject in order to like make sure that I only fill that in the frame, that subject in the frame. So in conclusion, you probably know by now, I will not be selling my GoPro 7 yet. Even though it's so scratched up, I don't think anyone's going to buy it. And if I do sell it, it's probably going to be worth like $100. So I might as well keep it. And then keep the Insta360 and film those really cool, unique shots and maybe use it more for skateboarding. So if I were to go back in time, probably I would have bought the 1-inch version of the Insta360. I think that would give me a little bit more picture fidelity, or like just a higher fidelity. Now, unfortunately, the resolution on that isn't that great. So I'm probably going to wait another 2 to 3 or even 5 years until they release an 8K or 10K version where it actually has sufficient pixels where you could just pick a certain spot. But that's going to be a really big device, or it's going to be computationally or physically very difficult to fit 10K pixels into an image and still capture really good quality video. And this is this main reason why VR technology has taken so long to progress. It's just very hard to show a lot of pixels in a wide field of view. By the way, if you want to learn more about the Insta360's unique features, like its interface, the excellent tripod pole, or its desktop software, I made a whole deep dive explanation of those topics on my secondary channel called J Syntax Media that talks more about camera gear and whatnot. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. So let me know your strategy. Are you going to go out and buy an Insta360? Or are you going to keep your GoPro? Or maybe you're going to buy both? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.